Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Ride throughput is something that I've mentioned quite a few times, and it refers to the number of guests that a ride can process per time unit. Generally, coasters have quite a high throughput of up to a few thousand guests per hour, while flat rides have a lower throughput of only a few hundred guests per hour. A higher throughput is better if you charge for the rides or sell on-ride photos, because that means that the ride will make more money. Some obvious factors that influence the throughput are the number of trains and the ride duration, but a less obvious factor is the placement of the ride entrance building. If the entrance is far away from the train, the guests have to walk a longer distance on the platform, delaying the start of the ride. Depending on the ride, the effect this has can range from basically nothing to absolutely disastrous. Here we have two identical junior coasters. The blue one has the entrance building in the middle of the train, making the average distance a guest has to walk to their car as low as possible. The orange junior coaster has the entrance building in the worst possible position, which is at the very back of the station. Both rides have their exit building in the same place, but exit placement doesn't actually matter. Guests that are boarding a train can walk through exiting guests, and they start boarding as soon as the guests have gotten out of the train. Let's see how much of a difference the entrance placement makes here. If we do a synchronized start, we can already see that on the next round the blue coaster departs a little earlier than the orange coaster. For the complete test, I let both coasters run for exactly 1 in-game year and checked how many customers they got in that year. The blue coaster managed to get roughly 1,740 guests, which is 10% more than the 1,580 that the orange coaster got. This is a fairly minor effect, and the effect would have been even smaller if the entrance was somewhere between the best and the worst position. So, for these kinds of coasters, it's clear that the entrance positioning doesn't matter all that much. The same is not true for other kinds of coasters though. Here we have two identical Wild Mouse coasters. The yellow one has optimal entrance placement and the purple one has the worst entrance placement possible. This time the difference is much bigger. In 1 year, the yellow Wild Mouse managed to get 2,630 customers, while the purple one only got 1,250, which is less than half. Even with the entrance building only 2 tiles away from the optimal position, you lose about 20% of your throughput. So why is the effect so much larger on this Wild Mouse coaster than on the junior coaster? It all has to do with how much time boarding takes up compared to the ride time. The junior coasters had 1 train with space for 26 guests, which they all boarded at the same time. The Wild Mouse coasters, on the other hand, have 8 small cars, each with a capacity of 4. This means that for every 4 guests the boarding procedure starts over and the guests have to walk the entire length of the station again. Whereas the junior train can immediately start boarding again once it returns to the station, a Wild Mouse car has to wait until several other cars have finished boarding first. If we reduce the boarding time percentage by making the actual ride longer, the effect becomes less drastic. The throughput of the purple coaster hasn't changed. It once again got about 1,250 guests in 1 year. This is because in both situations there's always a car ready to be boarded at the station. The yellow coaster, however, only got 1,870 guests, which is about 750 less than the short version did. If we take a closer look, we can see that this is because there are lots of gaps in between the cars where there is not a car available to be boarded. This reduces the throughput and the effect of the suboptimal entrance placement. The effect can also be reduced by enabling a minimum waiting time. If you keep the standard minimum waiting time of 10 seconds for these Wild Mouse coasters, their throughput will be almost identical. This is because that 10 seconds that the train has to wait anyway is almost always enough time for the guests to board, even with the worst entrance placement possible. This also shows the importance of reducing the minimum waiting time on rides with lots of small vehicles. The takeaway here is that the more vehicles your ride has, the more important optimal entrance placement is. The longer the ride, the less important it becomes, and it can even become entirely irrelevant if the ride and/or the minimum waiting time is very long. Lastly, the exit placement doesn't matter at all. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.